All right. So thanks everybody for coming. Thanks for those who joined us in person here. I know there's a crew online as well. There might be some more people filing in. So this is recorded, so we will share the recording later for those who couldn't make it. I know it can be tough on a Thursday night to make it and things come up. So I first just want to say thank you for coming, for being here, for showing up. These are not easy conversations to have. And parenting's hard and we're all just trying to do our best. So, just want to know that we're all here just to sort of support each other. And that's kind of part of the goal of being here tonight is finding a bit of community around this topic. So I just want to share a little bit about myself. My name is Jenna. I've got two young kids, 6 and 7. I've been in the tech industry actually for the last 20 years. So I started my career at BlackBerry, literally building one of the first smartphones. I spent 10 years in social media, actually building products that identify and remove harmful content. And most recently, been working in the health tech industry, trying to build products that actually help people's well-being. So I deeply appreciate and understand technology and how amazing it can be for our lives, but I definitely understand, how these devices are built, how these products are built, and how it can be harmful for kids. And so for me, it was about a year ago, I read The Anxious Generation, which if you haven't read yet, I highly recommend it for any parent, caregiver, educator. It to me was the kind of proof I needed that I knew in my gut about these devices and about these apps. And, it really summarized a lot of research that's been coming out. And it was a catalyst for me to want to start to take some change. So last fall, I got involved with Unplugged Canada. I met some of these other lovely ladies, Robin, you met, and Stephanie and Bethany, who couldn't be here, but we were on the first sort of chapter or champion leads kind of conversation with Unplugged Canada shortly after it launched. And we wanted to start a chapter here in Nova Scotia and actually have some conversations to change in our community. Oh, my camera's on. That's okay. They can say hi to me. So just to share a little bit about Unplugged, and I'll do some more later as well, but Unplugged Canada's mission is to help educate parents on the risks of early smartphone adoption and try to inspire a bit of a collective movement to restore childhood, through advocacy, some resources, and we have an online pledge that we use to help empower parents to unite to delay smartphones until 14. And by signing that pledge, you really kind of join this supportive community. And we have over 2,300 parents across Canada who have signed it. And so tonight, I would ask of you, if things resonate with you, if this is something that, really kind of stands out to you that you want to be in support of, please consider signing that pledge. That is really helpful in showing other parents that there's more of us out there who want change. And it may seem like a simple action, but it really does help show that people want change. So before I dive into tonight's topic, I do just want to acknowledge much of the research on smartphone use is really based on boys and girls. And if you're a child or you don't fit into that, neat category, please know that's totally valid. I just hope you encourage you to take something away from this that resonates with you. But tonight, what I'm hoping you're going to learn is a little bit more about how smartphones affect boys and girls differently. Take away some actions that you can do today to help protect your kids online and give them a healthier childhood. And give you some resources to have conversations with the kids and your kids and the parents around you. And so I'm going to talk for hopefully just under an hour. Tonight's session's a little longer than my January one, just because it's diving a little bit deeper. And then we'll have some questions and discussion, and I hope you'll help participate in some of that at the end. So just to kind of touch on this, again, some of this may be a repeat from those who saw in January, but I want to just make sure those who are new kind of understand sort of where we sort of are starting with this. So 2024 was a bit of a turning point on this topic. We had lots of new research coming out, much of it summarized in The Anxious Generation. And we started to see new cell phone policies coming out in Nova Scotia, across Canada, and around the world to start to restrict the use of smartphones in schools. And we also started to see new legislation being proposed in countries around the world to start to look at social media and how addictive it is and start to create some restrictions on that for younger children. But how did we get here? In 2 decades, everything's changed. Back in 2005, Nokia ruled, maybe BlackBerry as well. But it was in 2007 and 8 that these devices started to shift to be more supercomputers in your pocket. The iPhone launched in 2007. 2008, the App Store launched. It was 2010, we saw Instagram come online, where you had the front-facing camera, the selfie culture, the influencers, the most curated version of your life online. 2011, 4G launched in Canada, meaning that these devices could be always on, always connected, and everybody could basically have a device like that. 2017, TikTok became available in Canada, and that's really when we started to get that highly addictive short form content. And that's where things really started to change. To today, we have 87% of 12-year-olds in Canada who have their own smartphone. But they're not really phones at all. These are, when I think of a phone, I think when most parents think of a phone and they feel like they need to give their kid a phone, they're thinking about something that can text, that can call, and that's it. Maybe play Snake. But really, we're handing our kids a supercomputer in their pocket with 24/7 access to the world, and that's what's different. But during this time, not only the technology changed, childhood changed. We went from this play-based childhood that we've had for our entire existence, where kids played, and that's how they learned and developed, to this phone-based childhood, where really these devices are becoming the center of their lives. And so what happened about 2 or 3 decades ago, we started to overprotect in the real world with a fear of, abductions and things like that, reduction of play outdoors, the reduction of play at schools, risky play being cracked down on. And yet we did not protect enough online. Again, I think for a lack of awareness, honestly, for all of us. And so parents have been really in this impossible situation because it doesn't really feel like we have a choice. It's either we give our kids access to a product that we know can be harmful, or we risk alienate them from their friends at a crucial stage in their development. So it feels as a lose-lose for parents and for children and for society. And many parents wish things were different. If you ask most people, they feel that smartphones are harmful to kids. And 70% of parents believe that they negatively impact family life. I mean, the number one fight we have in our homes is about screen time. And 64% report negative impact on their children's sleep. And that is so critical, especially during puberty and development, for their mood, for their academic performance, memory, attention spans, everything. And I think what's unique about this is that, people sometimes say this is just another moral panic. Every generation, there's some kind of technology that comes out and they say it's going to melt your brains. This one's different. Some of the youngest people who have lived through this are some of the biggest voices for change. And so when you ask them, there was a poll, it was thousands of Gen Zers they asked, and they said majority think that smartphones are harmful. And almost half wish that TikTok and Snapchat had never been invented. I think that to me is one of the statistics that stands out to me. How many of us would have thought oh, I wish the TV was not invented, or that Nintendo systems were invented. It's very different this time. And even 57% support parents restricting children's access before high school. Because these companies really took a big page out of tobacco's playbook. They worked this to make it very addictive from the onset, and they know that they've caused harm to an entire generation, and they're doing very little to do something about that. And yet smartphones have become the norm. In Canada, 57% of 9 to 11-year-olds own their own smartphone, and 86% of kids between 9 and 11 have at least one social media account that is technically not supposed to be required or allowed until 13. And I think what's interesting that Jonathan Haidt's been highlighting lately, which, anybody who has kids who've been born after 2010, the Gen Alpha, is nicknamed the iPad generation, because they've had devices, 40% of them, since they were 2 years old. And that is just kind of the gateway towards smartphones in many ways. And everyone's got one because everyone's got one. And most parents know this is harmful, but it's really hard to resist when everybody else has them. And that's the trap that we're all in right now. It's this network effect of smartphones and social media mean that we feel like both the young people and the adults feel like they don't have a choice. And some may say, the train's left the station. This is how kids are growing up these days. This is how they communicate. But I challenge that, because I think if there was a train that left with our kids headed for a bridge that was out, now that we know more, I think we would call it back. We would do something. We would stand up and try to change that course. But, when kids did get devices in the last 10, 15 years, there really was no research on its impact. So it's not like we knew this at the time. Everyone was excited about it. They thought our kids were going to be so, tech savvy. But now it's overwhelming. And that's what part of tonight is to help inform more people about what the research is saying now. So I'm going to touch really quickly on some of the kind of broad foundational harms of smartphones, and I'm going to dive into more specifics on the boys and girls. But, attention fragmentation is the one thing that Jonathan Haidt, the author of the book, is actually most concerned about now, that as he's been having, even more of these conversations in the last year, because these devices, you cannot argue that they're disrupting our focus and our attention spans. Ask any teacher who's been in the classroom for the last 10, 15 years. It is harder and harder for kids to actually deeply focus and actually focus on a task. And that's sleep deprivation. Lots of kids are not getting enough sleep. They encourage late night use. The blue light emits and makes it harder to fall asleep. And so that just continues to impact their sleep. And that social deprivation, social media is meant to make people feel connected, and in many ways it can, but at most times it actually creates unhealthy comparisons and it makes people feel more lonely and kids more lonely. And that addiction behavior comes out. They're designed to capture attention, they're designed to keep it. It's designed to exploit our brain's reward system. And so it creates that dependency and irritability when they're separated from devices. And the opportunity cost. Devices have replaced opportunities for free play and independent activities, which are crucial for development. And unfortunately, I could go on. There's lots more harms like myopia. The cases of short-sightedness has actually gone up 300% in recent years because of handheld devices being in front of kids' screens, kids' faces. And 84% of bullying takes place on a device now because kids are way more brave behind a keyboard. And the distractions, kids are getting 500 smartphone notifications a day. And again, that dopamine drain just keeps making them feel dependent on it to almost feel good. And what's shocking too is 53% of 9 to 17-year-olds report neck pain and aches due to screen time. You can actually see it in many young people now. They actually, have that forward kind of neck issues. And academic performance has been plummeting. There's tons of research on tracking global academic performance across reading and math and sciences. And since 2010, they've been plummeting. Because smartphones are also fueling a mental health crisis. Depression, anxiety, self-harm, and suicide have dramatically spiked since around 2010 when children started getting smartphones. And there was a study of 28,000 young adults, and they looked at when they first got their smartphone to their mental health today. And the earlier they got a smartphone, the worse their mental health was. Because when teens have especially problematic use, they're 2 times more likely to have anxiety and 3 times more likely to have depression. 3 in 5 teen girls feel persistently sad and hopeless, with 1 in 3 seriously considering suicide, which is a 60% increase in a decade. And when boys spend at least 5 hours a day on devices, they're 71% more likely to experience suicidal factors. And if, again, we look at Canadian data, which I try to include as much as I can, so we feel like it's not just happening everywhere else, it's here in Canada, and our kids, is that they've been asking young people around 16, 17, and every year, what is your mental health? And they've been doing this for decades, and consistently for a long time, that younger generation was between 75 and 80% say they'd have excellent or very good mental health. And now those same young people, girls are 42% is all that's saying they have excellent or good. And boys are 52. That is a significant drop in only 10 years. And if you don't know, the US Surgeon General last year issued a warning that said the mental health crisis among young people is an emergency. And it's time that we require a warning label on social media platforms. They don't do this kind of warning for things other than tobacco, drugs, those kind of substances. So this is serious. And unfortunately, puberty is many times when kids are getting these devices, and it's a critical time for vulnerability because their brain is still developing. That prefrontal cortex for decision-making, impulse control, and self-regulation doesn't actually finish developing until 25 to 27. And it's most vulnerable to addiction during this time. It can have long-term effects. That dopamine sensitivity, again, this is very sensitive during puberty. So constant dopamine hit hijacks the reward system. And they're already in a more highly emotional time in their life. And so things like social media just amplify those emotions. And it's also when they're forming their identity. And so, they're already trying to figure themselves out, and now being able to seeing an ideal version of everybody online starts to stunt that self concept and help them create their own identity. And then their peer influence just gets, even more amplified with social media because they have constant access to other people's opinions, likes, and activities. So now I'm going to dive into, what's happening to our girls. So it was really social media that really got girls on devices as much as boys because they were already there typically with the gaming. And so these devices and apps, were initially there for, helping with identity formation, they were peer validation, but now it's introducing cyberbullying, intense beauty standards, and validation pressure. And it's really reshaping girls' mental health and their self-esteem with long-term effects that we're still studying at this point. So I'm going to talk through the 4 ways that social media exploits girls. It's amplifying social comparison. So when we think about growing up as a kid, we could compare ourselves with other people in our communities and our schools, maybe some celebrities in magazines, or that 1-hour show a week that you'd watch on TV. But now kids compare themselves to every person and celebrity and influencer in the world 24/7. I was at St. Mary's a couple months ago doing a guest lecture there with um, it was the anthropology of childhood course. And we had two groups and we had them actually debate social media. They were all Gen Zers, 18 to kind of 22-year-olds. And we talked about this. And one of the four sides said, well, hey, like we could watch, America's Top Model, and they had incredible unnecessary beauty standards. But the other side said, yeah, that's 1 hour a week, and you're looking at a couple of girls. I can look at thousands of girls in an hour on my phone, and just it just amplifies it that much more. Because people share the most curated version of a life online, and it makes kids, especially girls, feel like they just can't live up to it. And it allows the whole world to criticize their bodies, their life, leading to rises in eating disorders and body dysmorphia. 90% of girls who use social media actually see themselves negatively and are dissatisfied with their lives. 75% want to change aspects of their body due to comparisons on social media. And 1 in 3 consider ending their lives as a result of comparing themselves with others on social media. And this is a quote where I think most young girls might kind of resonate with Olivia Rodrigo, the singer, is I kind of want to throw my phone across the room because all I see are two girls too good to be true. And unfortunately, there's an alarming rise in cyberbullying among young teens. Female aggression is often expressed by attempts to harm relationships and reputations of other girls. It's always been there. But, social media has enabled endless ways to damage other girls online, and you can never get away. And teens who are part of minority groups often say that cyberbullying is a major problem in their life. And again, 29% of girls have had false rumors spread about them online. 75% have experienced cyberbullying of some form, and 11% experience it every single day. And 75% of teens think social media companies and governments are not doing a good enough job to support them in addressing online bullying. Because that old adage of sticks and stones may break my bones does not apply in the world of the internet, where false and hurtful and humiliating content can go viral and global in just seconds. And honestly, with AI right now, it's going to be even worse because with any photo, slight, capture of your voice, you can create anything. And what I found really interesting diving into this was the concept of spread of sociogenic illnesses on social media. So girls have always been more, sharing in their emotions and sharing technically their disorders, so they're more vulnerable to sociogenic illnesses, which are caused by social influence rather than a biological cause. So when everything moved online and girls became hyper connected, those with anxiety, depression, and even certain other disorders could actually influence others to develop similar symptoms. And so even just, for women, if there's one woman who's depressed, there's a 142% increased chance in her friends becoming depressed because we just share so much emotion that way. And 30% of Gen Zers have actually diagnosed themselves with an illness based on social media. And there's been a 1,900% increase in referrals for tic-like behavior in clinics post-pandemic, with the majority being young girls, which is something that's actually never really been seen at that scale before this. Like mostly symptoms of Tourette's have been generally for young boys. So it's really been, Dr. Kirsten here, she's a researcher. She said that this is the first outbreak they've seen where there's this sociogenic illness spreading solely through social media and mainly among young girls. And unfortunately, the predation and harassment online is awful. Girls are exposed to direct messages from adult men who seek them out. And unfortunately, school cultures that look at their photos and naked bodies as currency for social prestige among boys. And many of these predators groom, bully, and coerce their victims into filming their own abuse on internet-enabled devices, oftentimes in children's own bedrooms in their family home. If you haven't seen the CBC Fifth Estate article on this and video in the last month about a girl in Edmonton, it is an absolutely gut-wrenching read, but it is something to be aware of that does happen in Canada, and it's awful. 72% of girls experience abusive language online and 55% sexual harassment, and 51% of Canadian girls experience stalking online. Much of that is happening online again, not necessarily in the real world. And again, 80% of self-generated sexual abuse imagery involves girls age 11 to 13. Because when we give our kids access to the whole world in our pocket, we give the world access to our children. So I'm going to share this video, and I hope online you can hear it. And it kind of shows a little bit, if you haven't seen it yet, the journey of a girl getting a phone and typically, the stages that she goes through. So it was actually a bike company that made that video, but I think the message is actually really there that like get kids outside, get them on a bike, get them in sport. People say they could hear it. Okay, good.
They can see it for sure.
Okay, maybe someone can give me a go ahead because if not, I'll make sure I fix it for the next one because it's even more important. So yeah, social media really is that trap that lures people into that community and connection. And again, many times it can be. And I don't want to say this is an all or nothing scenario. It's just the majority of times, especially with young people, they're looking at trying to make as many followers as they can get. And that's multiplying their relationships, but reducing their quality. And it's making it harder to spend time with close friends. It's less and less actually say that they have a few close friends. And you can see that decline happening again very dramatically after 2010 and the number of boys and girls feeling lonely after 2010. So let's shift to boys. Video gaming, porn offers boys lots of excitement, competition, and teamwork, making the digital world really compelling. And changes in school in the last few decades, like less play, stricter rules, have left boys feeling really disengaged and seeking connection online. And so digital spaces help shape boys' identity, mental health, and relationships. And some can be drawn to very supportive communities, but others are drawn into harmful subcultures that promote resentment, hypermasculinity, and even radicalization. If you haven't seen the Netflix series Adolescence yet, I'd highly recommend that as well as a watch because that has really opened up the conversation because up until then, I feel like most people were talking about how social media affects girls, and lots of people just felt like it was mostly affecting girls, but this really opened up what's happening to our boys as well. Because our boys are retreating from the real world in many different ways and for many reasons. And that's because lots of the socialization for boys has been moving indoors, alone, and online into gaming worlds. And they're kind of withdrawing from the real world where they could develop the skills needed to become competent, successful, and loving men. And instead, they're lured into ever more appealing virtual world in which desires for adventure and sex can be satisfied, at least superficially, without doing anything that can prepare them for later success in life and work and love or marriage. And, boys are spending on average 8 hours a day, sometimes between 8 and 18 on screens. And 36% of teens actually believe that they actually spend too little time face to face. Many of them actually know it and they feel it. And again, if they spend more than 5 hours a day, they're at a significant higher risk of suicide factors. So Jonathan Haidt talks about this a lot in the book where he said, boys really found less opportunities to exercise agency and develop friendships through risky play and pursue unsupervised adventure in the overprotective real world. And they found an ever increasing opportunity to do so in the virtual world. And so, having that unrestricted access to the internet in your pocket creates a gateway for content that we'd never dream of exposing our kids to in the real world. Early exposure to pornography presents unrealistic depictions of sex and body images, which can lead to distorted expectations and self-image issues among young men. And then pornography hijacks that brain reward system again, flooding it with dopamine, creating a neurochemical dependency that's very similar to drug addiction. And I think what to me is concerning is the stat that the average child that's exposed to hardcore pornography is 11, which means that's an average, which is 8, 7, 6, depending on what the numbers look like, but they are getting exposed very young. And 57% of Canadian boys view pornography regularly, with 85% viewing on a smartphone. And 52% report seeing pornography depicting rape, choking, or someone in pain. And this is Gary Wilson. He's the author of Your Brain on Porn, which is a really interesting book that dissects this from a science perspective. And heavy porn use during adolescence may desensitize the brain's reward circuitry and potentially leading to lack of motivation in other areas of life, like your academics and social interactions. And again, there's a significant rise in gaming addiction. Not all gaming is bad, so I don't want anyone to take that away from this conversation. But those online video games, multiplayer video games, are very immersive and they're very exciting and amazing. but they can be very addictive and isolating. They're designed to be highly engaging and trigger those dopamine releases, again, similar to other addictive behaviors. And so many boys are becoming really irritable and unhappy when they're not online, and excessive gaming replaces that face-to-face social interactions that they need for that social development and emotional intelligence. Canadian boys are spending 17 and a half hours a week on games, and 41% of them actually say they spend too much time on games. Again, they recognize it. And 13% of boys report symptoms of video game addiction. That's a pretty high number if you think about it. And again, this is Dr. Nicholas. He's the addiction expert, and he's also the author of Glow Kids, another great read. Video games are addictive digital drugs that have a neurological impact in the kid's brain similar to that of narcotics. This is not a matter of opinion anymore. This is what brain imaging studies show. And there's been a reduced risk-taking in all aspects of life. Boys are experiencing significantly reduced risk-taking behaviors in social and physical development, largely due to that overprotection in the real world. This hinders boys' emotional regulation, their social confidence, and mental health, and it doesn't prepare them for the real-world challenges that they're going to face. Controlled risk-taking is essential for boys' healthy development, and its absence in our modern society is really harming their growth and their transition to adulthood. There's been that 161% increase in depression in boys between 2010 and 2020. And you'd think this would be a good number, 46% decline in hospitalizations for fractures and broken bones, but that actually means that they're literally not outside enough and not taking enough risks that aren't, high risk events. And only 56% of Gen Zers had a relationship in their teen years versus 76% of Gen Xers. So just less and less are actually having in-person relationships of some sort. Again, this is, sort of a general statement here, but like boys need to take real risks with real girls. They need to cross that chasm of a dance floor and have that awkward but essential part of life of learning and growing confidence, resilience, and ultimately how to find a mate. Because women in virtual reality and porn sites and now AI girlfriends don't require any effort, compromise, or courage. And it's only real life relationships that offer the depth of connection that we really need as humans to grow. And so this is all really contributing to this kind of concept of boys' failure to launch. There's been a significant rise in these young people not transitioning to adulthood. And so that means they're more likely to live at home, they're engaging in excessive gaming and internet use and withdrawing from the real world and social responsibilities. And so they're struggling to hold steady jobs, either due to lack of motivation, anxiety, or social skill deficiencies. And even like if you look at the number of people coming out of post-secondary education, only 41% of those are completed by boys. There's been actually a shift of women coming out with more post-secondary education. And 50% of young Canadian men between 20 and 29 live with their parents, with 20% of young men experiencing a 20% higher rate of unemployment than young women. And again, when kids are on their phones or online all day, it's not always just what they're doing that matters, it's what they're not doing. They're missing out on those crucial experiences that help them grow into healthy adults. And unfortunately, our boys are being targeted significantly with sextortion, which is the fastest growing crime against teens. Sites like Instagram, Snapchat, and Roblox are used by predators to target children, and they're often creating false identities and deceive their victims into sharing sexually explicit photos and videos of themselves. And then what they do is they take those images and they blackmail them for money or more images. And this can have severe emotional impacts, potentially even to self-harm and suicide. Like in Canada alone, there's 10 cases reported every single day. That's like 7,000 in the last 2 years. And that's reported cases. I am sure there are many that go unreported. And 86% of those extortion victims are boys, and 70% of them are between 13 and 25. And Snapchat receives 10,000 reports of sextortion every month on their platform. And I think one of the most chilling stories about this is mother Braden Marcus. It took 27 minutes from when a predator on Instagram made his first contact with Braden, posing as a young girl, requesting images before he took his life. It was 27 minutes. And this was a boy who was a football star, great student, never had any problems, very social. And that's all it took for him to leave this earth. And again, the new misogyny is a topic that's come up quite a bit since that release of the adolescent series on Netflix. But if you're not familiar with the concept, the manosphere, it's basically an international network of social media influencers and communities promoting male supremacy and anti-feminist ideologies, often blaming women for men's problems. And young men are seeking belonging. They're looking for somewhere to belong, and they stumble upon these groups many times unintentionally through those algorithms on YouTube, TikTok, and Reddit. And they're sometimes feeling very rejected by society. And so those vulnerable men are drawn into the welcoming nature of these communities, potentially leading to radicalization. 46% of teen boys identifying as white were fed narratives about male supremacy and anti-feminist ideologies. There was a group, I can't remember which group it was, I follow many, but they did a study recently where they all set up YouTube accounts as young boys, and they tried literally as simple as just searching for workout, like gym routines. And within a few videos, they were being fed this kind of content. Like it very quickly just diverts them into that kind of content. And there's been actually a 33% increase in teen dating violence since 2015, with 45% of teens experiencing it. And again, anybody who's a teacher in the classroom and at schools, principals, like they are seeing this in the school systems of how the behaviors are changing between almost boys and girls on this. And majority, I don't have the number for Canadians, but most young men have seen Andrew Tate, which is one of the worst of these influencers kind of spouting this ideology. And this is Nigel. He's the founder of Exit Hate, which is another group trying to raise awareness around this. But boys as young as 9 are being targeted, groomed, and radicalized by these online groups. And a lot of them are saying they feel lost. You know, they're worried about identity and they feel voiceless. And so they feel like they don't have anywhere to talk. And so they get sucked into the manosphere that's giving them a place where they can have these difficult conversations. So again, I have a video here, which hopefully folks can hear it online. If you can't, this is actually White Ribbon. It's a Canadian organization, and they are doing a lot of work to sort of raise awareness of this. Again.
Made some leftovers, okay? I know you had a bad day. Can we talk about it tomorrow? Yeah, sorry, I have to go. I love you, okay? Love you. You'll be good? Okay, love you.
We got now 5. Oh, we got 5 games in a row. Headed to the playoffs. Yeah, we just can't stop winning. I can't let you hit. I think it landed at the parking lot. Oh, for sure. Throw the ball around there to hold it. The world is yours. Stop waiting for permission. You're either a predator or prey. Be a predator. Quit feeling and start lifting. Be strong men now. More than ever. Silent phone. Loser. Shut up, you're a little. I can't believe you, Shiloh. Nice.
Hi, Casey. Hi. Come on.
Post it. Come on, you're strong. You're nothing. Floppy seconds. You don't want that.
Where's the line? I've seen that many times. I feel like every time I watch it, it still gives me chills. Um, so, it's really little wonder that the people who have made this technology, have made these devices, keep it away from their kids. Steve Jobs didn't allow his kids to have an iPad because he thought they were too dangerous. Ivan Spiegel, who created Snapchat, he actually gives his kids only 1.5 hours of screen time a week. And Bill Gates didn't let his kids have a computer or a smartphone till 14. And he actually wished he waited till later. And as parents, this isn't our fault, but it is our responsibility. So how do we change this? It's going to be a team approach. We do need our parents, other parents together. We need the kids and we need schools to all work together on this. And so Jonathan Haidt in the book, he gives really 4 clear norms that we need to do and actions we can take today to change this and give back that play-based childhood. So one is to delay smartphones until high school, delay social media till 16, phone-free schools bell to bell, and more independence, free play, and responsibility in the real world. Now, tonight I'm going to focus on these 2, just for time. And again, I want to clarify, this is not an anti-tech conversation. This is a pro-tech, pro-childhood. It's not about completely delaying technology altogether. It's about, taking advantage of the benefits it can have, but doing it at a point when they're ready and when it's safe to do so. Because childhood is fleeting and it's very precious. And our kids deserve to grow up in a childhood where they can learn and grow without these addictive by design algorithms and age inappropriate content of social media and smartphones. And so the hope here is that if we all actually start to agree to delay giving our kids smartphones and instead give them simple phones or until high school, the peer pressure instantly reduces. And it can feel impossible. I know many of my friends' parents right now who are feeling this, like it can feel impossible when you're the only one trying to do this. But if we can work together and act collectively, it makes it infinitely easier. And so we've had organizations around the world, if you're not familiar, Smartphone Free Childhoods from the UK, Wait Until 8's from the US, and they have hundreds of thousands of parents who have come together and committed to delaying. They have created this huge movement in the US and in the UK, and that's what Unplugged Canada is trying to do here in Canada. We started just last fall, and we have already got a couple thousand parents who have already signed. So again, if there's one thing that you can take away from here, if you have kids who are under 14, please consider signing this pledge and please share it with other parents, because if you can get the friends of your kids around you and the parents of the friends of your kids' friends around you to commit to this, it is so much easier and you can support each other through this. And so you may ask, why take the pledge? What's so important? It's just an online pledge. Well, again, it's strength in numbers. The more parents that see others signing up, the more people committing to it, the more we'll feel empowered to say, yes, I'll delay. And it's that common commitment. It's collectively saying we want to create a new norm. And frankly, this also signals to our government, to our education system, that parents want change. So these are important. So please, again, consider signing. Go to unpluggedcanada.com and take a look. It's very simple. You can enter very limited details. If your school is not listed, which we tried our best to pre-populate as many schools as we could, just send an email to Unplugged Canada at info@unpluggedcanada.com and they'll get it added to you for you. And then you sign the pledge and then you can actually see how many others have signed it in your school. So what's really neat is Nova Scotia is actually the 4th highest province in the country. We have about 127 signatures so far, but Ontario just crossed well over 1,000. And we have some exciting news to come out soon on some partnerships there that I'll wait to share. But we're making progress, and Nova Scotia, I think, can be a leader in this if we continue to have these conversations and open up the dialogue. Because that parent pledge really makes this collective action simple. If we all commit together and we see more doing it, it just shifts the pressure the other way. So how do we navigate this with our kids in this shift? I want to introduce a couple concepts to you. The concept of being tech intentional. So this is not just with smartphones, but I think in general, because smartphones are the center. But this is really about anything. This is from Emily Jerkin. She's a screen time consultant, which is another amazing resource for parents. But it's about using screen-based technology that enhances, nurtures, and supports yourself, your child, or your family in ways that aligns with your values. But resisting and delaying or limiting screen use that interferes with healthy mental, physical, cognitive, and emotional development. So less is more, later is better, and relationships and skills before screens. And also just think about why your kid's using technology. It's called kind of 3 C's of technology use. So, are they creating? Are they actively using their brain to learn something new and develop skills? That can be amazing. There's some amazing things that technology can bring for that. Are they connecting? Let's bring back more of the in-person gaming that we used to have growing up. Are they actually leveraging it to potentially connect with people? That's great. Or are they consuming, where it's really just about either entertainment or consuming to avoid boredom, taking away from sleep and social interactions? And even think about how they're using the tech. Consider the location. Are they using a device in an open space, being supervised, or are they plugged into a personal device in their bedroom alone? And even the medium, are they watching it, on a TV, together as a family, or even with their sibling, where they have to actually negotiate what they're going to watch? It also reduces the risk of nearsightedness and neck issues when they're watching it on something that's further away from them and on a bigger screen than something that they're holding a few inches from their face. And again, that frequency and time, it's not about all or nothing. It's not about having none of this. It's about, just looking at how often it is, how long they're on it for that period of time, and just making sure it's not taking away too much time from other activities. And I want to just make sure I clarify something, because I think this is then again, this concept of overall screen time, and even smartphones can get kind of blurred. Things like story time are actually really great. Movies, books, TVs, they follow this coherent narrative arc that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it actually engages our emotions. We connect with the characters. It has suspense. We build empathy. And so watching a movie requires sustained attention for sometimes 2 hours straight. And that trains the brain to actually process information pretty deeply. But the concerning stuff is the fragmenting time. So that's that short form content like TikTok, Reels, Shorts that are delivering those bite-sized dopamine hits that gives you that instant gratification. And that scrolling, like physical scrolling, is literally built off the slot machine concept that gives you that instant reward system. And it rewires the brain to need that constant novelty that makes it harder to have longer, more meaningful activities feel very boring. And the other thing is to consider access over ownership. So giving your child access to a family device on your rules, whether it's a computer, a shared phone, a tablet for occasional use. Because as soon as you give your kid their own social media account, the algorithm starts to take over. And also the psychology changes when they own the device, as opposed to being just simply allowed to use it. And again, some may say this is the way of the future. Parents just need to teach them how to be as safe as possible. If not, they'll be left behind. I can guarantee you we teach apes how to scroll on TikTok in about 2 minutes. So that's not what they need to be successful. So we do need to build up this digital literacy. We have to introduce technology in a very thoughtful way that's at age appropriate and developmentally appropriate stages. I want to plug Protect Young Eyes. They're a great organization that does a lot of work to empower families to have the knowledge and tools to help keep their kids safe online and to expose them at the appropriate stages and times. But, as anyone who's been trying to navigate this, parental controls are really, really difficult. Even the most tech savvy parents struggle with this because there are sometimes hundreds of different settings that you have to actually enable, whether that's on your Wi-Fi, on your television, on your devices, tablets. And that's why 58% of teens say they don't have any controls, because honestly, I think most parents just give up because it's so complicated. And it's just a whack-a-mole of ways they get around it or holes that keep getting created by those devices. And most teens figure out ways to get around them, which is what's really tough for parents. And, kids are going to get exposed even if they don't have their own device. So just always make sure you keep that open dialogue with your kids about these topics and ensure that they know that they can come to you if anything happens and provide support, not judgment. This is, again, Chris McKenny's from Protect Young Eyes. He kind of gave this advice of just open up a conversation, even if you don't need it yet, to be like, if you ever see something that bothered you online recently, you can always tell me about it. Whatever it is, I want you to know I'm always here from you. Just so they hear that regularly and they know that this is something that anything does come up, they can talk to you about it. Because unfortunately, smartphone apps are becoming less safe. With Meta's removal of fact-checking recently and reducing moderation, more and more harmful content is getting on Facebook and Instagram. I don't know if about a month ago you guys saw in the news when they started to remove this, there was teen accounts got flooded with live suicides, live murders, and it was outrageous what was getting flooded to their accounts. And folks like TikTok actually publicly share, they have to give the disclosure of these things, but between July and September last year, 444,000 accounts linked to child grooming, sex trafficking, and sharing of child abuse material were removed. And that's 39% of the content where minors are solicited for sex or actually get through TikTok moderators, and they actually still have moderators, at least on their platform. And even YouTube, again, it gets dark very quickly. After searching one disordered eating video, 70% of the recommended content from then on just gets more harmful and more concerning. And there were 700,000 drug dealer accounts removed from Snapchat. That's fueling the fentanyl crisis in teens. If you haven't seen the film that just came out called Can't Look Away, this lady here is one of the incredible lawyers who is working with the hundreds, thousands of families who've lost their children to fentanyl because they were able to get it through Snapchat. It's basically a drug dealer's haven to be able to select it because it's everything disappears. There's no trace of anything. And these companies just keep creating these Titanic-sized dangers, and then they tout when they put out a new parental control that barely touches and fixes anything. And young people have a lot of regrets. Again, if you talk to the folks, the kids who have lived through this already, 50% of them regret spending too much time on social media as kids. 62% say that social media does more harm than good. And I think, again, that's the thing that keeps coming through. It's not all bad. There's some amazing things that social media can be for finding new things, creating hobbies, seeing the world, but there's a good majority of it that does more harm than good. And 70% say they quit to struggle. They struggle to quit because everyone's there and they feel trapped. We asked at a panel in Yarmouth, we did like a 40 student kind of focus group there with kids from all demographics. And we asked them, we said, would you change the age you got your device, social media? And they said, I wouldn't have, most of them were like, I wouldn't have it today if I didn't have to. I feel trapped. I feel like I have to have it because everybody else has it. And when they say they grew up with it and they regret it. And governments are starting to recognize the impact social media is having on kids. There's lots of countries who are stepping up and they are saying, we need to do something about this. We need to start recognizing this as something as addictive as other addictive substances and raise that age, protect them, do proper age verification. Because dopamine is a chemical that makes us feel good. We smoke, we drink, we gamble. It's highly addictive. And so we have age restrictions on those things, and yet we have no age restrictions on social media and smartphones. And arguably those are being seen as almost just as worse because they're so accessible. And so recently Unplugged actually has taken another step to try to, move this movement forward, is we actually created a call to action for our government to start prioritizing this. Canada has been very quiet on this, and we have not done enough. When you see many other countries, many other states as well across the United States, starting to propose legislation. So we have a call to action that, again, I encourage you to consider signing. Anyone who's an adult, who's a resident of Canada can sign it. Your grandparent, educator, aunt, uncle, Gen Zer, anybody can sign it. And we're trying to signal again that we should be looking at the age of social media. We need to implement better restrictions on even just getting access to porn sites and harmful sites. But most importantly, expanding the education to the public on the impacts of these devices. We had MAD campaigns that went out, in our schools with people. We had this is your brain on drugs, the egg frying in the pan growing up. Like those things really stick with people. And we need that level of public education coming from our public systems. So please, again, consider signing that and support. And again, most people, I think, don't ever feel like this is going to happen to them or their child. And, every kid is different. And I hope that most cases that may be true, but you won't really know until you give your kid a phone. But I can tell you that of all the families, I'm on a Facebook group of like 600,000 families, and there's just constant messages of families who regret giving it too soon. And yet nobody has said they regret delaying. So if you are considering giving your kid a phone, I'm going to talk with folks in a sec about if you already have one, what you can do. But for those who are kind of thinking about it or their kids asking for it, I would first say maybe just pause and ask yourself, what's the purpose that you're thinking about giving it to them? Do they like to listen to music? There's some great screen-free options like the Mighty Music Player. You can download Spotify lists and Amazon playlists and listen to them offline. I'm really hoping more people bring back the home phone. I know with some of the carriers, they're very expensive, but Fungo is a $5 a month service. You just buy a phone on Canadian Tire for $20, Amazon, wherever you want to get it. We got this with my 7-year-old, and all of her and her little friends call each other for like 2 minutes. It's the cutest thing. They know how to navigate it. They have to figure out how to leave a message. They need to know how to say hello when you pick up. And they're actually coordinating their own little play dates now. And like, they're coordinating, like if someone missed school, they call them and ask them, why weren't you at school today? It's really amazing to see them develop that. And then I thought to myself two other things. One is that my kids have no idea how to get into my phone. So if there was an emergency, they can navigate this now. And as they get older and they can come off the bus, on their own, they have a way to contact me if needed. And then I don't want to assume anymore a babysitter coming into my house is going to have a phone. And so I think that's something that I encourage everyone to think about is go check out Fongo, $5 a month. And there's even referrals. So if you get it and refer it to your friend, you get free months and it goes on. So that's a great program. If you do feel like at one point they're getting more independence and you want some way to check in and send some messages back and forth, consider a parent controlled watch. I think to me, the Garmin Bounce is one of the best ones because it doesn't have all the other distractions that some smartwatches can have, which can be problematic in schools and again at nighttime. But if you get one that has simple messaging, calling with approved contacts, it's a great way to, again, sometimes people want it for the GPS tracking too. If you're a kid, you want to know where they are, if they're getting some independence.
Best part of that is there's no social media on there.
Exactly. There's no internet, no camera, no social media. Again, occasional internet use. If you have the ability to have a family laptop in a shared space, like tech with them and show them and let them use it, but in an open space. And when they are ready to have a phone, consider either letting them use one when they're out or getting them a simple phone. Just talk and text is all they need. And when they do want to start to introduce more, I'd even recommend starting with something like a pinwheel device. So this is one that came to Canada recently, and it is custom designed with an operating system that you cannot get an open browser or social media. And you can't even download certain other apps that are just not appropriate for kids. There's literally no way kids can get around it. And you have full control to set when it gets turned off, when you can override it if you want, but like it is a great tool for like that first introductory when they are starting to, again, need some more independence. We have to teach them just like when they need to drive, we have to start to, get them ready for that independence as they get into higher adulthood. But what do you do if your child has a phone? And again, many people are here already, and this is here again to be for you to just have some things to take away. Because I know it's hard. And again, you may even have an older sibling who has one and a younger one who's going to say, but they got one and they were 10. And as a parent, I want to remind you that you have the right to change your mind, especially if you have new information about something that's potentially harmful to your child. It's never too late to make a change. And I also hear that constantly on that Facebook group is like parents who just said, you know what, I went back to them and just said, look, I didn't know this. Now I know this. This is why we're doing it, and engage them with it and talk to them about why. So a couple things I'm going to just suggest you consider. Set an example yourself on your phone usage. Call a family meeting and say you want to talk about screen usage. But instead of talking about theirs, talk about yours. Because they're going to expect you're going to come at them with like some kind of new rule and surprise them by saying you want to talk to them about what you can do better to be less reliant on screens and your phone so you can be more connected with them. And model what you want to see, because I can guarantee if you start there, they'll start to think about it themselves more. And create some healthy tech habits. So again, create those device-free spaces and times. If there's one thing I recommend, get them out of the bedrooms, out of the bathrooms, and away from mealtime. Create just some spaces that are the norms in your family that they're just not allowed, because much of the harms happen when it's behind closed doors. And limit your own use. Like I've been starting myself to be more aware. I've been putting it in another room when I'm home if I don't need it. And if I really do, I have to walk out of the room and they don't see me on it then, or it's has to be enough that I actually want to step away and go get it. And if I do have it in front of my kids, I try to narrate what I'm doing. I tell them, you know what, I'm just answering this message for someone at work. They need my help right now, or I'm just actually looking at a recipe for dinner tonight. So they actually know it can be very much a tool and a tool for communication, but they know that why you're using it. And tech together, do some things together on it. And again, as you either for both adults and as your kids start to get older, there's some cool stuff like the brick. It's only available for iPhone. So unfortunately, I don't have one, but I wish I did, because you can tap it and it can actually like temporarily lock out all those distracting apps. So they have a lot of university students using this. So they'll tap it in their dorm room and it'll shut everything off on their phone except for messaging and music. And then they'll go and they'll actually be able to focus and study in the library because they have no way to be sucked into TikTok and Instagram. Lots of parents are using this when they go on date night to just like lock it and go to dinner and then still have texting and phone for the babysitter, but you also get to be more present. So there's some really neat products that are coming out to try to help with this. And so again, if you want some support in talking with your tweens or your teens, I really recommend Screen Strong. They have some really amazing resources there. And a lot of them are actually like filmed with young people. So again, if you want your younger folks to like watch something that is actually with young people, that they might actually listen a little more because it's not coming from a parent, it's coming from somebody who kind of looks and acts like them and has lived through it. They have some really great conversations there. And so again, if you are considering and you think there's ways you can start to pull back a little bit, consider like switching to that safer phone for kids. It's built for kids, that pinwheel phone. You know, if you are going to have it, set some strong boundaries, create some limits and some family rules. Unless you think, you know, it's not too late and you could start to remove it altogether. But again, this is going to be way easier if you can get a few of your friends' parents, their friends' parents on board with this, and you kind of work on this together and be comfortable that you're probably not going to get a response from everybody. It might be crickets. It might be surprising. I've been surprised by how many people, once you actually open the door on this, everybody's kind of almost relieved that someone's talking about it. But I want to touch really quickly that this is always not about taking everything away. You know, we do want to give them back that play-based childhood. So like, it's not about taking everything away. Can we give them back more independence? Can we give them back some more time with their friends, some more risk-taking? Because our kids are smarter, safer, and stronger than our culture gives them credit for. This is Lenore Spinazzi. She's the founder of Let Grow. You may have remembered her, I'm going to say like 5-6 years ago. She was the mom who let her son go on the subway in New York. And it went like all over the news that she was like an unfit parent to like have let him do that. But little did anybody know she had actually coached him, gone through that route many times, and he was really wanted independence. And this kind of created a movement for her to want to just, you know, show that we have to build some of these skills in our kids because they're losing these critical skills. They're losing resilience, they're losing their confidence, they're losing their independence and critical thinking. And if in the world of AI, as somebody who's like in it right now with tech in my work, critical thinking is going to be what's the most important skill that our kids have going forward. And if we don't start stepping back and help them step up, then they're going to continue to lose that. And so again, Let Grow has some great ideas of how to do that. And there's even cool stuff that they can do in schools. Like one is actually a homework assignment you can do in your class or actually at home and just say, what's something you've never done before on your own that you think you can do? And it could be as simple as making their own lunch. It could be as simple as like walking to the store or going in and getting, you know, a chocolate bar on their own inside the gas station. Something simple. It doesn't have to be huge and life-changing, but it's amazing what you'll see as far as their confidence grow and feeling that they can do it. And so the whole point is just reclaiming more of that real world experiences. And it's not about feeling this is a whole bunch of deprivation because we're taking everything away. It's about opening up more opportunities in person. So as I start to wrap this up, again, overall, later is better and less is more, but every family is different and how you approach this within your family is your decision. But one thing to be aware of, if you have trouble controlling your kids' TV or video games or iPad time, a smartphone is going to be much harder. And know that there are alternatives to consider. The default doesn't have to be giving your child an iPhone, and that there's a growing community around wanting to see some change so you don't have to feel alone. And so if I summarize this, so if your kid doesn't have a smartphone yet, again, highly consider delaying until they're at least 14 and delaying social media until at least 16. And tech together, like use it together, start to teach them about digital literacy and do that as a family on shared open spaces. And when they do start to get some independence, get a simple phone for keeping in touch only and only when they truly need it, and create more opportunities for free play. And please consider signing the pledge. And if your kid already has a phone, again, if there's one thing you do, like make a no phone upstairs rule, because up in the bedroom is where most of the harm happens unnoticed. Use strong parental controls and make the device as safe as it can be. Regularly check their phone and usage. You have a right to do that to keep them safe. And teach that digital literacy, create more opportunities for screen-free time. I've been seeing a lot of parents kind of putting together a little like phone docking station in the kitchen when their friends come over and just say, look, you can get your phone whenever you want, just it stays in the kitchen. You know, so they're not restricting it, not saying they can't have it, because I know other parents may want to make sure they can check in with them, but just put a place where they just know that's where it lives. And then you're going to go, you know, socialize each other together and create a safe space for that conversation so they can come to you with concerns. And engage other parents, start a book club, read The Anxious Generation together and discuss it. Recommend others to watch Adolescence or Childhood 2.0, or send them this recording afterwards and get their thoughts on what they think of what was shared tonight. You know, talk to your SAC. or even your PTA, raise awareness of parents within your schools. I know, we had support from Steve Gallagher to he sent it out to all the teachers in HRCE. And some of the schools and parents have been sending out this event and details of Unplugged Canada. So they're starting to show support for it. So start opening up conversations within your school and tell them about Unplugged Canada and come join some of our events, because we're trying to do this. This is all volunteers who are here. We're just parents trying to help get the message out, help build a community and bring back that community, because it really takes a village to raise a kid these days. And let's just keep talking. To me, the power is within us to make change. And we just need to keep having these conversations with parents in your close circles. And so again, thank you for listening. These are not easy conversations, but we're just here to help support each other and just know there's more and more people who want to see change. So I'll leave it here as a couple quick things. Please consider signing the pledge. Please consider signing the call to action. And know that Stephanie is going to be doing an event next month, and she's actually going to be diving into how smartphones affect neurodiverse brains. So it's going to be a really amazing conversation. There's been a lot of parents, looking for support on this. So check out our registration link there, and it'll be same place, same time, essentially on Thursdays. And there's also the virtual component. So we want to make this accessible to everybody. And if you are interested in getting involved, please reach out, ns@unpluggedcanada.com. The more people we can have, again, kind of championing this, the better. And the more we can sort of see an actual impact and change. Thank you. Hello.
Thank you so much.
Ooh, hello, thanks.
I'm sorry to yell at you. Thank you very much. Big proponent here. I'm sorry I joined a little late, ladies. Read the John Haidt book, exceptional. High school counselor role here. I just had a member of Child Exploitation International come in. She's a Crown prosecutor, a lovely young lady, to speak to our high school population, but to speak to parents as well. And a lot of references to the John Haidt information and the theory there. Just want to thank you very much. Appreciate and respect what you folks are doing with Unplugged and how you're trying to raise more awareness. Totally agree. I've never, grown man here in education for many years, never been on social media in my life. That's sad to say.
Well done, actually. Thank you for that. Thanks, Todd.
But you're wonderful, and continue the movement, please.
We will not stop. Any questions in the room or comments? I will send out, again, this recording, and I have a bit of a resources deck that I'll send that has resources for some of the stuff I mentioned in here. So you can check that out.
Yeah, well, thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting. I read the book, and I'm obsessed with all of it. All of that is mind blowing for our generation.
Yeah.
Kids. You mentioned this, but I want to see if you could kind of expand on that about what we can do. So besides, the rules and the limits of usage at home, I'm wondering about, our role model in the usage of our smartphones.
Yeah.
Because I know how we use our phones. I'm not very addicted, but I know how I use it. I know how everyone uses it all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about how my kids, 8 and 5, can see, my words and can see my actions. And so, what are your thoughts on that? Like, how much you have to kind of restrict your own usage to say, okay, you have to restrict yours for me. So that's
let me just, in case you didn't hear online, the question was just around asking for some more thoughts on how we as parents and adults can model good behavior and look at our own use of devices. So I'll just share what I've done, honestly, because this has been a journey for myself as well, as somebody who works in tech and works remotely. A lot of stuff comes in basically on my device. So I have put limits on all of the apps that I can get sucked into. So it literally will shut off, and I don't think I was ever really aware of how much time I spent on my phone. It's hard because it is sometimes my work, but I actually did a bit of an audit of my own screen time and looked at it and then set up controls so that I could turn it off. I also have things like all the notifications completely turned off on everything except for phone calls. So that nothing comes in unless it's a phone call, because that's the most important thing that I need. And then, as I said, I think earlier, like I put it away as much as I can lately. I actually found if I have it on me physically and I'm around my kids, it's just it's just this habit that comes out. Like you have a moment and you think, oh, I could check that thing. Many times, this is the industrial engineer in me, but it's the efficiency of like I can get a little thing done really quickly while I have a moment. But in reality, I've kind of just realized that like that is a bit of an addiction. And so I physically put it in my room when I'm around my kids. And at nighttime, I've actually been taking it out of my room, or at least putting it as far away. It's not beside my bed anymore. It's further out where I have to actually get up and go get it. And when my alarm goes off, I get up and have to go turn it off. So little things like that is what I've done. And then also just again, like narrating it when I am needing to use it in front of them. I do kind of tell them what I'm doing, but even if it's not urgent, I just immediately put it away and make sure I focus on that. Because if they see like, they're trying to get your attention and you're sucked into this. And honestly, the other thing I've been doing with my kids is trying to make them aware of this. So I've actually talked to them a lot about these phones are kind of tricky. They kind of make you want to keep using them. And you kind of even observe when we're at dinner out in the restaurant, and you're like, wow, isn't that kind of sad? Like they're all looking at their phones, not talking to each other. Like to make them a little bit aware of it. So that's some things that I've done.
There's a few things too, Jenna, if I can.
Yeah.
There's a few things on iPhones also that you can do that I've incorporated. I have it set up to send me a screen time report every Sunday to tell me exactly how long I've been on my phone this week, and I look at the stats to see how I'm doing with it. Another thing you can do is you can set limits on individual apps. So let's say Instagram, like doom scrolling, I have it set so that I can only have so much time a day, and once I hit that limit, my phone says, you've been on too long today, you're done. The other thing that I like to do is in our house with our kids, the most chaotic time tends to be 4 to 7 p.m. That's when they're really like, they want to interact, they want my attention, they want to talk about school, they want to help me make supper. So you can have your phone set up to actually, it's not as good as Brick, I don't think, but you can have your phone set so that it goes into downtime mode. So you can't use certain apps. So I have it set the same way as Jenna's, where it just lets me have like the phone.
Yeah.
And then I can't pick it up and go on things because it actually won't let me. And then once they're in bed, it'll let me do that stuff again. So those are a few things you can do on an iPhone to help with that.
I know the little girl behind had her hand up earlier.
Hi. Oh,
Just one sec. I just have one question of a girl in the room. I'll come just to you in one sec. Sorry, go ahead.
Can my kids sign the pledge thing?
You know what? It's meant to be your parent because if your parent sort of says we're pledging, just because we're trying not to capture, the young people as that. But if you want to have your parents sign it, that's amazing. And then same with the call to action. Like you as an adult, we're trying to make sure it's 18 and above. But again, both parents can sign it, grandparents, aunts and uncles, like anybody. So thank you for that question. That's great. They're
actual pledge. You are putting your name is
your name is on it. So yeah, it is tied to you. And and just to clarify in the pledge too. So like, for example, if you sign it this year, like my daughter's in grade 2, when she moves to grade 3, all the data moves them to grade 3. So it like kind of follows them along. So again, you sort of see if you have 10 kids in your grade 2 class who have signed the pledge, next year, they're like when the school year takes over in September, that'll move up to grade 3 and it'll follow you along. And if you have 2 kids, you sign it basically twice, one for each kid. So the pledge is basically per child, just to clarify that. Thank you, Robin.
So you don't sign it year per year for the same
No,
kids?
you sign it once and then it'll follow you along. And again, if you change schools or anything, just let us know and we can move that to the right school and things like that. I think it was Kim had a question. Did I get that right? You're online, you want to ask?
Hi. I'm actually a friend of Kim's. We're just both watching at the same time. So this is Sheena. I put in the chat, I just thought I'd bring it up. So if you have a kid that you've already allowed them to have the phone in the bedroom, I'm just wondering if you've heard of ways like what, is it cold turkey? Is it like cutting it back, or like how we can go about removing it?
Yeah. I mean, here's a couple things I would say. Maybe the first one would be removing it definitely, an hour before bed. That I don't know if it's overnight you mean as well. And then I would just say, like, again, have a conversation that just tells them the why. I find like what I'm hearing from other parents who are kind of in the thick of it as well right now is that the more they involve the kid in the conversation and maybe even talk to them about how can we do this together? Like what's your suggestions on how we start to limit this? So they feel a part of it and a part of having control of that process instead of it feeling like it's coming at them. So just something to consider, but maybe start at least at overnight and not having it an hour before bed. And then
Mhm.
maybe not even having it during the day in the room alone.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, great question. Did you have a question? Sorry. No, you have one.
What you were saying about how you have like the downtime for certain apps.
Yeah.
Ooh, probably send that
Yeah,
to-
we can come up with
Okay.
something and
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
There was a question just as to looking for support on instructions on how to set up downtime. I know that's something that we'll just share with some of the resources when we send out a follow-up email. So yeah, great question. Any other question?
Yeah, you mentioned that part of your talk was about giving the kids more independence in the the outside world, and in the book, Hyde talks about the risks for us as parents in asking the kids to go outside.
Yes.
And he mentions, like some associations have a little card that you can give to your kids saying,
Yep.
I'm okay here.
Yep.
I'm not Canadian. I was born in Spain. How likely is that my kid will get in trouble? Or I will get in trouble
Yeah.
if I send my kid, to buy,
I
muffins
think,
that.
I think in the US it's a lot worse.
Okay.
I think for whatever reason, they have some laws that really restrict the kids having any independence, where like, fortunately, some parents literally were getting arrested if their kid went to the store half a kilometer away. Yeah, I think it's a little bit more extreme there. I've never heard of anything like that. I think Canadians are a little more free range overall, especially maybe in a bit more rural communities, but I think it's a great idea as far as if they do go out, like, I don't know if you heard it online, but he sort of said one of the recommendations was even just giving a little card with them if they go to the store to say like, hey, my mom knows I'm here. I'm trying something fun, trying to get some independence. So like if anybody asks them, they can kind of show them that almost. But it is just, unfortunately, that's a good way just to protect yourself or protect the kid and make sure they know that if anyone asks, they sort of have something. And even for store owners who might feel like, that kid looks awfully young to be in here alone.
Yeah,
But it's because doesn't happen as much, right?
Yeah, like anecdotally where I live, I'm from the Annapolis Valley. I've been working on that with my children recently, and we've had no problems to date.
Yeah.
Like it's been a very positive experience. My son walks out of the store feeling really good about himself because he picked up a couple like apples and oranges. Like it's been going very well.
So besides liquor stores, like anything else, they're fine.
Yeah.
No, like that's.
I think too, I've seen this, I think somebody in Nova Scotia who did this at one point, where they were organizing, depending on where you live. Thanks. Like even biking to school.
That's
so like
the community.
Is that your community?
The bike
Yeah.
bus. Yeah.
The bike bus?
Yeah. The bike bus is my friend Jen is initiating it,
I've
and
seen that.
we're
Yeah.
about to start like a new in our subdivision. But yeah, the bike bus, and it has had such a great reception and also really amazing community support. We just had a really big corporation donate a bike raft to the school.
Oh wow.
And so it was picked up on CBC. There was
Yeah.
like a mini documentary. It's getting really great feedback, and I'm seeing a lot of parents like beeping at them, waving at them
Yeah.
in the morning.
So again, just in case you didn't hear it online, Stephanie was sharing that there's a thing called the bike bus. And I think there was a mom who organized that in the Valley. And it's where biking to school together and getting like literally a community of kids where basketball or something heading. We're kind of biking together to school and like everyone kind of jumps in the lines and comes past their house. And it's really amazing community building kind of initiative. So again, that's one of those ways. Even for me, my like 7-year-old, I have her go in, she wants to get an ice cream. I'm like, here's the money, go ask for your own ice cream, get the change, make sure you count it. And like, she was a little hesitant at first. And then she's like, I got this now. It's like, she loves that. And she loves that independence. And it's just, again, very simple little things that you can let them, have some of that independence. Anybody have more questions?
I'm a parent and a teacher, and I'm teaching grade 4 and 5 this year. And I had no idea how much influence I had on kids. Like, it floored me. I just spoke freely, and I was like, no, we would talk with screen time, and they would share like their video games, like boys, girls, or on video games. And they would share the types of video games. And I was like, oh, that's a lot of time. Oh, I really, you know what? I don't think that's a good one that you should be on. I don't think I have some concerns about that one. That doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
And I had no idea. We would just talk freely and have these open circles. And then all of a sudden, one of the kids raises his hand and says, this is stupid. I don't do this video game anymore. I quit. I was like, oh, I was just like, that's amazing. I was like, I'm so proud of everybody. Like, that's amazing. And then another kid said, the next day, he goes, I good too, Snippy. I was like, oh, and I'm not saying but I'm just saying, but I do realize that I voice concerns. I'm sure they hear it at home.
Yeah.
So it just helps me support the parent.
Yes.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Like, and I just think as a parent, when you go into your teacher, feel free to say, listen, I really am an advocate for the paper and pen.
Yeah.
Because us as the school system, we are going way too much with the
Yes.
computers.
Yeah.
We do so much screen time in the schools.
Yeah.
It's actually scary.
Yeah.
And by junior high, there's hardly any paper and pen anymore. As a parent, I strongly say, listen, you have voice, you have power. Just tell the teachers, go, you know what, I really have some concerns. And you'll be, I bet you the teacher's gonna go, I'm not, like, I don't think they are.
Yeah.
And we can kind of get on.
Well, I'm just going to share for those online. So there's just a parent and teachers just sharing how much influence teachers can have even on kids and suggesting things that might be harmful that they may want to reconsider, and having some great success stories of kids actually coming back and saying they stopped that game. And also just talking about, ed tech to me is a whole nother conversation. I think that it's been really generating. Again, Jonathan Haidt is really diving into that because, ed tech is really just big tech in a school uniform. They are literally like what those devices also, even though they're maybe locked down as best they can. I know it. I have friends, kids who are like, they're constantly on it. They're gaming, they're getting into porn, they're getting onto social media. Most of the time they're spending on screens in schools is nothing to do with education, unfortunately. And we're seeing like Denmark I think it was Denmark or Sweden, can't remember. They took a stance and they literally took out all ed tech in all P to 12 classes this year. They said, you know what, we're going back to pen and paper. And they were one of the first who actually adopted it. And they were literally just said, we're reversing 100%. And that's, I think, the thing that's really becoming his next focus is the ed tech space, because the data is not lying that like as soon as ed tech got introduced and smartphones got introduced, test scores around the world are plummeting. It's highly engaging. You can't deny that kids are going to be super engaged in a game that's built to be gamified and hit dopamine in their brains. Are they actually learning anymore? No. So I know that's a whole nother topic, but I'd say like what she was encouraging was like, talk to your teachers about it. I'm sure many teachers are concerned as well. And I think this is something that has to be happening as well as the education system perspective. And hopefully we'll see some of that soon.
To piggyback on that, just a parent teacher conference, I have a 13-year-old and, chatting with both teachers, and I've gone through his history, and it's every minute of the day he's searching up Lego and anything but something related. And the teachers know and they hate it. And I've substituted as well. And you're just policing constantly. So the use of the Chromebook, and I've gone like to administration about it as well. And it's just, it's just another way to get online. He doesn't have a phone.
Yeah.
But, managed to get on Discord, with the school laptop and that got locked down at school, and all of a sudden they don't have YouTube anymore, but for how long did they have access? And
and there's lots of ways
as they go. But sadly, all of our kids are kind of the guinea pigs along the way.
I guess we were just chatting, it's a whole school, like it's all of HRCE that is making those decisions, right? Like I just realized lately my son's in middle school, but he has access to his iPhone.
Yes.
So if all of his friends are choosing to be on a device, or if he's choosing to be on a device and they have no one to play with, they all just do that, right?
Yeah.
So I guess I don't feel like talking to the teachers will get mobility. I'm wondering if there's we advocate, or is a group like this that can advocate for changes, because they're also gaming when they're done their work. They're like, we're done and there's nothing to do. We all know how to log into the game.
So I'll just share for those again online. There's a question about phones in school. So I didn't get into it in this session, but in my last session I went into that. I think there is a misconception in Nova Scotia with the policy. It is not a bell-to-bell policy. It is bell-to-bell from P to 6 or 5, depending on your school. But middle school and high schools, majority can have it at lunch, at breaks, in the hallways. They're just not allowed during the class. There's some amazing schools around Nova Scotia in the middle schools, especially, who have set a standard of actually taking it fully out. And the testimonies, I'm actually trying to work on actually building a bit of a use case to show HRCE, and I've had conversations with some of those folks. We actually had a roundtable in Nova Scotia. There's a organization called the DS out of Toronto, and they're doing roundtables across Canada in every province to get feedback on the policies that went in place. And it was amazing. We had the head of the teachers union, we had principals, we had teachers, we had community groups, we had the gentleman, Gary Adams, who wrote the policy basically in Nova Scotia, or the directive. We had public health, we had Nova Scotia Health. It was a great conversation. And much of it was really around how do we collaborate and work together? Because if we just stand over here and we're screaming, it feels very alone. If parents are feeling like they're standing and screaming, if teachers feel like they're alone, like we just have to all come together, because I think everybody wants this change. We just need to figure out how do we get enough voices to make sure that those who need to hear it, hear it. And that's part of why, we didn't put on that call to action the bell to bells, because there's a couple other initiatives that are working on that. There's a phone free schools movement as well that's focusing in there. But I think absolutely, especially in middle school, like that's when kids are getting them. That's the most vulnerable time. We have to get them out of the schools bell to bell, because you hear those stories. They're like, I want to play, but all my friends are on their phones, and like everyone's just sitting there on their phones, not playing, not talking, not socializing. And the schools that have taken it out, kids are incredible. Like they're loud again. They're talking, they're playing, they're asking for more games, they're asking for more things to play outside. And it's like taking a time machine back 15 years ago almost. So yeah, I would say advocate. I would also recommend talk to your MPs and your MLAs, because I've been leveraging my MLA and it's been really helpful, because they have a way. We are a voice. And they say, like, if they hear enough of it, it means people want something and they have to pay attention and they have to bring that forward. So leverage the people who, you've elected in your communities, and, they can be very supportive. And I think, again, the more voices, the louder we are, we can see more change. Just going to check online. Does anybody have any questions? I know we've been chatting lots in the room here.
There's a question about information about the dangers of games. Where can they get more information about that?
So I think, again, Protecting the Eyes has a really great, it's in the resource deck I'm going to share, but they have literally an assessment of like every app and every game and every device that you can look at. And it'll give you more information on it as far as like what to be aware of, what's inappropriate. Unfortunately, there is just more and more getting created every day. So it does feel a little bit like a whack-a-mole of like something new will get created under a different name that was shut down because it's harmful. And then, you basically just have to wait until you get wind of it before you can kind of stop it. But definitely Protecting Eyes has lots of assessments of apps and games and things like that.
You mentioned before Roblox. I have no idea. To me, it's the same as Minecraft. Is it the same as Minecraft? Is it a bad kind of stuff?
I mean, there was a recent report that called it a pedophile hellscape as a quote. Yeah, Roblox.
Yeah.
Again, you can. My kids are not on it, but like I've gone in and set up myself as like a 6-year-old on the device, and I've played it, and I've been shocked, even with all the lockdown of like I can't communicate with people. I can't, I'm supposed to not see harmful things, but like it is still shocking what you can see in there and get exposed to. So again, somebody has to actually take the work to lock it down, because it does not happen by default. And then, but again, there's ways, again, if you can do it where they're supervised, like if kids want to play, and Minecraft, as I understand, there's some like offline versions where you can just build and you're not interacting with people. So there can be some good parts of those games. It's really when they can actually get access to strangers. And then sometimes just like what still gets written on walls, or what those characters are doing in those rooms that can be, surprisingly inappropriate. Anything else? Yeah, someone's just saying, yeah, it's not just smartphones, it's iPads, tablets, gaming systems, laptops, computers. Yeah, 100%. I think the smartphones have become kind of like the center point, because it is something that's like in your pocket with you 24/7. That's kind of what makes it just that much more concerning. But, again, iPads are basically a large smartphone in many ways, depending on which one you have. And those gaming systems, even your TV, smart TV, you don't realize like kids can get on the internet there, and so locking down your Wi-Fi, if there's one thing you do, that's probably one of the best ways you can start. Again, Protecting Eyes has this great like pyramid of protection, they call it, I think. And so it's like Wi-Fi layers, then it's like, having conversations. It's like how you lock down the device, how you lock down the apps, and just has like layers that you have to create, unfortunately, to try to make it as safe as possible. Anything else online? Really appreciate the discussion. I know we're basically a minute over, so that's kind of been good timing. Okay, we'll end it here. Again, thank you. I will send out the recording in probably another day or so and some resources, and please just keep these conversations going is our ask. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye.
so much.